Hey guys, it's Chey. Welcome to the channel if you are new, and if you're not, hey boo. So for today's video, I'm actually starting a series. It's gonna be called Today's Treasure. So it's basically a shop my stash where I go into my collection and pick out products that are either old, that I haven't really used, or that are brand new that I've had in my collection for a long time that need some love. So to kick off today's treasure, we are throwing it back to some OG 2016 glam, and this is the look that I came up with. This is my 2016 signature rose glam look. If you guys want to see what products that I used to create this look, then you already know what to do. If you like it here, if you like my vibe, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And without any further ado, we're gonna get into today's treasure and throwing it back to some 2016 glam. For today, we are doing some 2016 makeup, and I am trying my best to channel my inner 2016 girly. I do have my skin already prepped and primed, so I did use the Thayer's Milky Toner. I did go in with an eye cream, and I did use the Medicube PDRN serum, and then the COSRX Intensive Cream Moisturizer. So that is what the skin is looking like right now. So for me, I'm going to double prime today. Now in 2016, your girl was not double priming. I definitely used the Makeup Forever Step 1 mattifying primer all over the face because your girl is oily. So I thought, yes, we are going to matte the face. But I have grown since then. Okay, for the first primer, I'm actually going to be using the NYX face glue. So I still am oily, but right now it's a little bit colder. So I like to go in with more of a hydrating primer and then use a mattifying primer in my pore area. So I'm just applying this all over the face. And I was always a eyes before foundation girly, so I still kind of do my makeup that way. So I always start with the brows, eyes, and then do my base. So back then, this is so cringy. I did try to use the Anastasia dip brow, but it just didn't work out for me. And personally for me, the girlies that I was personally watching for eyebrow tutorials was my girl, Miss Nitra B, okay? I actually used a brown eyeliner for my brows. Crazy. So I actually used a sharpenable pencil and pretty much just outlined my brows and then filled them in and then feathered the front, because in 2016 the brow style was very much like an ombre brow. I'm not doing an ombre brow, but we have since then elevated the brows. So I'm going to be taking my Morphe brow pencil in Java, and we're going to fill in the brows. And for me, when I was filling in my brows, I left it pretty much where it stopped right there. But now I kind of like a more elongated brow. And now I kind of do my brows more straight. My brows naturally come down, but I noticed that kind of shrinks my eye, so I don't personally like that look. But baby, in 2016 you definitely had to have an arch. Then once you have the eyebrows filled, we actually sculpted the top and bottom, and we were doing the halo brow effect. So we went super light with the concealer underneath the eyebrow because you wanted that brow bone to pop. So now it's a little bit more toned down. You kind of want to do a little bit lighter, but nothing like 2 to 3 shades lighter. So I'm going to kind of go a little natural. I'm actually kind of guilty of this. So I still go with the same concealer and I go on top of the brows. It's still very much 2016. But now you want to use more of like a foundation color. But for me, I just have to sculpt and carve out the brows. So I'm still guilty of doing this, except I make sure that it's blended into my skin so it doesn't look super crazy. Like right now, it looks it looks insane right now, but we're gonna just blend her out. Honestly, for concealer back then, I was like 21. I was in beauty school working at Ulta, so I didn't have too much money. My husband was in the military, but he only had been in for like a year, so we really weren't making a lot of money. So I was using a lot of like drugstore products, like LA Girl. Fawn was like my concealer of choice, and I'm very much a if it's not broke, don't fix it type of person. So LA Girl Fawn was that concealer, and it just worked on everyone. So as you can see, the brows are giving snatched. So now we're gonna move on to the eyes. So because I'm a lot older than when I was 21, I never really used an eye cream, but baby, we are a mom over here and life is looking a little bit differently. So taking care of my under eyes is very important to me, and also just I don't want it to look dry and crepey under the eyes. So I'm going to be taking the P. Louise Rain On Me eye gel. This is their hyaluronic eye cream. I'm just going to apply this underneath the eye because this part under your eye is the only area where there's no pores. So you just want to always make sure that that area stays moisturized, and when you have these areas moisturized, that also helps you from, you know, creasing, and it also minimizes fine lines. So we want to do all of those things. There wasn't really too many eye primers I was using. I think I was using like the NYX Jumbo Stick in like white, which is crazy. Okay, I was using that, and then when I wasn't using that, I was just using my concealer, so my LA Girl Fawn concealer. But because I just couldn't get my hands on the P. Louise base, I was new to like online shopping, so I did most of my shopping in store. But now, baby, if I can get it online, I am ordering it and having it shipped to the house, because I don't have time to be popping into stores. I have a baby, I am married, I have things to do, errands to run. So I actually do most of my makeup shopping and clothes shopping online. Things have definitely changed. Back then I was definitely a mall girl. I loved going to the mall, and of course working at Ulta, I would always see the new launches, so I would be able to just buy in store and get a discount. So to prime the eyes, I'm going to be using the P. Louise base in Rumor Number 4. When I want a more natural look, I do use Rumor Number 5, but whenever I want my makeup to pop, Rumor Number 4 and under is really gonna make the eyeshadow pop. And the eyes are nice and primed. And for eyeshadow palettes, for me personally, I was using a lot of Makeup Revolution because your girl was the broke, okay? I was the brokey. I did splurge here and there on like Too Faced palettes, but I was mostly using Makeup Revolution. And then of course we had to use Morphe, okay? Morphe was my jam. I loved how many shades you got for the price. Ugh, you just couldn't beat that. And in 2016, I feel like 2014 to 16, 17 was just like the era of like influencers and influencer collabs. So of course we are going to be using the iconic, okay, JACLYN Hill palette. You just had to be there. These are what the colors look like. So you do get those warm browns, some neutrals, some blues, and a little bit of pink. I would say my signature glam for like 2016 was definitely a rose gold eyeshadow look. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I kind of always tried to keep it pretty neutral. This is actually the original JACLYN Hill palette, so the names are not on here. It actually came with a piece of paper that had all the names on it, but of course I have since lost that. So I always like to use this shade right here in the middle, which is like close to my skin tone, and I'm just going to pop this into the crease. And honestly, for me, when I was blending, it was all about the windshield wiper motions. But now we kind of tap on the eyeshadow to make it more pigmented. So that's definitely different. I will say too, for 2016, I was more focused on the blend. So I just didn't really pack on the color like I do now, because now I want you to be able to see this eyeshadow. But before, like, I was okay with you barely seeing the eyeshadow, but just know it was blended, okay? The girlies I was watching in 2016, of course, I was watching my girl Nitra B. I was also watching Makeup Shayla, Jackie Ina, JACLYN Hill, Makeup by Tammy. I was watching a lot of the girlies, Jordan Lipscomb, okay? I was a YouTube girly down, okay? I used to come home from work and just watch a tutorial and do it with them and practice different eyeshadow looks, because I was still trying to master my eye shape. Now that we have the transition shade nice and blended, we are going to go into a more chocolate color. So I'm going to mix these two shades right here, and I am going to add this down here and into the crease, just to give that definition to the eye. And to deepen up this eye even further, I'm going to take this like cool tone brown right here, and we are going to add it kind of on the lash line and a little bit on the outer V. For me, I've always been scared to wear black, so dark brown was always as dark as I would go. Normally I would stop right here and kind of just get into the lid, but you know, I want the eyes to really pop, so I'm gonna actually repeat these steps to just intensify the eye look. I'm going back in with that first shade that we used for the transition. Then we're going back into those browns, or warmish browns, and going into the crease, and then going back in with that dark brown. So for me, I was always a shimmer girl, and you just had to cut the crease. So I'm going to do a half cut crease, and to cut the crease, we're going to use a liquid eyeshadow. Now at the time, Miss Stila was the eyeshadow to have, but like I said, your girl was the brokey. We're going to be using the e.l.f. liquid eyeshadows. I'm going to be mixing these. These are in the shade Comet and Little Dipper. In 2016, I really wasn't going above my crease like I do now, but sometimes I like just staying to my lid. And baby, we took it all the way down, but I actually prefer a half cut crease on me. So we're gonna just kind of stop right here. And in 2016, we actually never blended this part, but for today, I am definitely blending that area. So to kind of blend that lid shade, I'm gonna take this color right here, which is like a reddish orange color. I'm just going to add this right here. That way we have a natural like gradient onto the lid. For shimmer, I'm going to be taking this shade right here. And you had to spray your brush back then just to intensify the shimmer. And I'm just going to go ahead and tap this on the eye. I feel like the shimmers back then, they were shimmery, but they're not as shimmery as they are now. So I'm going to add a little eyeshadow topper on top. I'm going to be taking this Artist Couture, okay? I'm going to be taking this Artist Couture Diamond Lights Finisher in Spotlight Glitz. And I'm just going to use that onto the eye to really kind of add that sparkle that I'm looking for. I want something extra shimmery, so Spotlight Spotlight Glitz does have pink throughout it, so this is giving me the shine that I'm looking for. As you can see, look at how just amped up the shadow is now. You had to do a wing, okay, non-negotiable. And honestly, my wing game, I needed to use a felt tip liner, and now I actually use a liquid liner, which is crazy because I never thought that I would ever be that skilled to use a liquid liner. The pen was just so much easier to use. So we're gonna do a wing. So I'm gonna start from the outer corner. And we are going to take it up and connect that. And when it came to wing liner, you definitely wanted to see her. You worked hard on trying to perfect your eyeliner, so we were not really making them small. We were making them where you could see it. And we always wore a lash, and I'm not just talking about a regular simple lash. We wore a big mama lash, okay? So everyone was using the Lily lashes, but for me, I just couldn't justify spending $20 on a lash. So the lashes that I was actually using were from Beauty Creations, and they were like dupes to the Miami. But now we have so many available options for lashes. So I'm going to be using these lashes that I just got on the TikTok shop. I have been loving them. So I'm just going to pop those on, and I'm going to do the other eye off camera, and we're going to work on the face. And I'm going to prime my T-zone using the DANESSA MYRICKS Blurring Balm Powder. This is actually more hydrating, but it also mattifies the skin. But the Makeup Forever Step 1 mattifying primer, baby, you could feel it. You could feel that primer tightening on your skin. And for me, it was like, if I don't have that tightening feeling, then my makeup is not gonna last, okay? So for me, like, I had to use that Becca matte primer and this one, and I think NYX came out with their Can't Stop Won't Stop primer, and that one was super matte, and I loved that primer. It sucked up all the oil because the foundations that I was using back then were also not very oily girl friendly, so your face was just looking dry and cakey. So I'm gonna go off camera and do the other eye, and we're gonna come back and do the base. So we are back and the eyes are done. Oh my god, it's giving 2016. My puppy Nico is laying right there on the couch behind me, so he's got to be close to mama. And in 2016, we definitely color corrected, but baby, I was using the LA Girl Orange color corrector, and we were loading that B on. This is the color orange that I was using to color correct because that was the thing to use. But I have since learned that this is just a little bit too orange for my skin, and it was actually making my foundation and concealer more warm, so your girl was walking around looking like a Oompa Loompa. But we're not doing that in 2026. For color corrector now, we are using this one, which is the Huda Beauty Faux Filter in Mango. For color corrector, like I said, I was loading it on. Now I don't really load it on. I kind of just do a couple taps and that's it. To blend everything out, baby, we were using the beauty blender, and if you didn't have a beauty blender, what were you doing? Okay, you were basically trash. So we used the beauty blender for everything. For powder, we used it for foundation, and just a lot. So I'm actually going to use this sponge to blend out my color corrector because I don't want so much orange underneath the eye, and it kind of just melts it together where you still get that hint of orange, but nothing too crazy. We are now neutralized and color corrected. So normally now in my makeup routine, I would actually kind of underpaint, but in 2016 there was really no underpainting. We were doing foundation on top and then doing our cream products, so that's what we're going to be doing today. For foundation, you had to use a full coverage foundation, so I'm going to be taking the Estee Lauder Double Wear, okay? But you know, my skin is a little bit more on the drier side these days in the winter, so I'm going to be mixing a little bit of the NARS Natural Radiant as my foundation combo, and I'm going to do a pump of each, and this is the consistency of the foundation. I'm going to add a little bit of blue pigment into it because I don't want to look oompa loompa-y. And back then I just felt like I had a golden undertone, which I do, but I have like a golden olive undertone. So a lot of the foundations were very orange and they really just didn't match at all. But as you can see, using that blue pigment really helps to tone down that warmth. We used our beauty blender to blend out the foundation, but I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be using a brush because I want as much coverage as possible without soaking up a lot of product. Back then we were using like 2 to 3 pumps of foundation and it was all getting soaked up by the beauty blender, so you were literally going through foundation. But we're not going to do that because we are using a brush today. This is the Real Techniques brush. For spraying the face, we were always using the MORPHE continuous setting spray or MAC Fix Plus, but like I said, your girl was the broke, so I was using a lot of drugstore products. We're gonna spray the MORPHE one, and I'm just going to tap in the foundation. And back then we were putting like the foundation underneath the eyes too. Like we just completely covered up our face in foundation. Like we wanted to look fake, we wanted to look porcelain. Like that was the whole point of, you know, wearing makeup, you know. So that's what we're doing, going full coverage, because mama ain't never been scared of a full coverage foundation. I have still so much foundation left on my hand and I'm not putting this all over my face. Normally I wouldn't let a single drop of foundation go to waste, but now I just don't use the excess. I'm actually going to take my sponge and soak up any excess product because I want full coverage, but I want it to be more skin-like. For concealer, it had to match the foundation, like it had to be full coverage. So we have a full coverage foundation, so of course we had to wear a full coverage concealer. The concealer I'm going to be using today is from Pink Honey and it has great coverage. So I'm going to take it here, but back then we really drug it out. I kind of just focused it in the middle, but for today's video we are going to take her out, okay? I normally don't do that anymore, but we are going back. And then we're going to use our sponge and use that to blend everything out. For cream bronzer, we really didn't have a lot of options for our skin tone, so I was mostly using like the LA Girl concealers as my contour, and that was like my ride or die. But thank God, you know, we are in 2026 and there are more options for colors. You know, we still struggle with shade extensions and shade ranges, but there's more to choose from than back then. I'm gonna be taking this Milani cream bronzer. This is in Spicy Season. For me personally, like we would take like whatever concealer or stick and just draw it on the face, but now, you know, we like to tap it in and we don't want those harsh lines on the face, except, you know, when it came to contour, you wanted to see the contour. We also, as far as placement, we started our contour down here, like right here, but now I apply it a little bit higher because that's going to give the illusion of a higher cheekbone, especially because my face is very, like, I have big cheeks, so anything I can do to kind of slim them down a little bit and give like more sculpt, then that's what I'm gonna do. And of course you want to do the jawline because we want to get rid of that double chin. I really like that this Milani bronzer is more like natural on me, and it's not super dark because like I said, I go kind of crazy, but this one just looks more skin-like. Because we need to have a nice sculpted nose. I love a good button nose. And I also wasn't doing this step, but I'm going to take this cream bronzer and apply it to my lip, my top lip. And this just helps my lips look more pouty, and you know, my lips kind of get lost with the foundation and concealer. And now I'm going to add a brightening concealer. So I'm still using Pink Honey. This is in the shade 09C. I'm taking a brighter shade from Pink Honey and applying that right in the inner corner. And I'm not doing too much because this product is very pigmented, so a little bit goes a long way. And in 2016, I was not wearing any blush, but you know, we have evolved since then. I am going to be using the DANESSA MYRICKS Blurring Balm Flushed, and this is in the shade It Girl. Add a little bit right up here, nothing too crazy because like I said, we really weren't wearing blush. But if I had to redo this look, I would add blush. If I could go back in time, I would add a little bit of blush, but honestly, they were not making blushes like this, and everything was just so ashy and it just didn't show up on me. Now it's time to blend out that concealer in the inner corner, and I'm just bringing that down. Now when it comes to setting the under eye, baby, we were using a yellow powder. So I'm actually going to be throwing it back and taking the Laura Mercier, because if you did not have the Laura Mercier setting powder, what were you doing? And back then, I think they only had translucent. So we were using that, but for today, I'm going to be using translucent honey. To set under the eyes, we used a sponge and dipped it into the powder and set the under eyes, but I'm not going to be using a sponge. I'm going to be using a powder puff because we have upgraded to the puff. Okay, now I'm dipping into that powder, and normally I would just take this and literally pack it underneath the eye, but baby, we are tapping off that excess and we are setting the under eye. And as you can see, it is nice and smooth. And you know, Miss Laura, she still works, okay? As you can see, it is giving me that flawless bright under eye. And for me, I would set my whole face first with like a face powder, but I'm not gonna do that. I want to set the cream bronzer with a powder bronzer and my blush with a powder blush. So I'm gonna do that, and then the remaining of my face is when I'm gonna go ahead and use my powder foundation to just mesh everything together. For powder bronzer, we really didn't have that many options, and y'all, I was not gonna spend all that money on like a Glam bronzer or for NARS. Like, that was just out of my price range. So I was lucky enough to get my hands on the Makeup Revolution and Tammy collaboration. She came out with 2 face palettes. So she focused on creating palettes for deeper skin. So this one is going to be for like my skin tone, and then she came out with another one for even deeper skin. And this is what the palette looks like. So you get a blush, which, you know, orange blush was definitely the blush color to wear if you were gonna wear blush. So there's an orange, there is a highlighter, and then you have a bronzer right here and a contour. We're gonna dip into that bronzer, and baby, she really did her big one with this collab because the bronzer is super pigmented. And I'm just gonna be using tapping motions. Now back then we were not tapping, we were literally going like that, and we don't do that anymore, okay? So tapping is the way to go. If I sound congested, it's because I am. I am still not over these Texas allergies and my nose keeps running. I'm still super congested, so I apologize for that, but you know, it's not gonna stop your girl from beating this face, and the face is facing, okay? And then I'm going back into this bronzer. Another bronzer that I really loved and it was affordable was the Morphe Phenom bronzer, and I actually still have that. For me, like, if I like it, I am not decluttering it. It will stay in my collection for as long as I want it to. So hopefully I don't have a reaction to some of these products because they are very old. So we will definitely see how that goes. The face is giving very much bronze goddess. It looks so good, but you know, just for the 2016 nostalgia, we're gonna contour. Back then I was only using contour. I was not really bronzing the face. I'm just gonna add a little bit of contour just right back here. To set my blush, I am taking the Makeup Revolution Blusher Reloaded. Now these blushes are so good. This is in the shade Pink Lady. And set that blush. Honestly, with the DANESSA MYRICKS Blurring Balm Flushed, you don't really need to do that, but I love a good blush moment. And we take our blush a lot higher up now. Before it was like really low, like right here. But like I said, we want a good snatch now. So we do our placements, or at least I do. I do my placements a lot higher than what I used to do. I'm gonna take that same yellow powder and I'm gonna come right here and snatch that cheek. Because I didn't add that contour and everything for nothing. I want you to be able to see the hard work I put in. I'm not gonna bake my full under eye, but I am gonna focus it right here in the T-zone. And doing this also just like helps reverse contour to really snatch the nose. And for lips, okay, we were in our Kardashian era, so everything that Kim was wearing and her makeup style, Kylie, but back then we wore a matte lip, okay? And the colors we were wearing were like more mauve, so think MAC Whirl, Dose of Colors Truffle. Dose of Colors was peak. And Anastasia, those were the brands for matte lips. And also ColourPop. ColourPop was still up and coming, and you know, I really couldn't afford Kylie Cosmetics like that, so I was always placing orders on ColourPop. Why was I wearing MAC Stone with no lip liner? Crazy. And actually my first MAC lipstick was Candy Yum Yum, and I would literally like put it on, no liner, and go out the house like that. I wouldn't even be wearing makeup, just a bold lip. Crazy. This is Morphe Bar, so they don't make this anymore, but this is similar to Morphe Trendsetter, just a little bit more warmer. This is really close to like MAC Chestnut. And for lip color, like I said, we are using Kylie Cosmetics, so I'm using Candy K, and I loved this color. Me personally, I love a good highlighter moment, and honestly, you just had to be there. The highlighters were popping, okay? So we were using JACLYN and Becca, their Champagne Pop, which I still have. So it's basically a champagne highlighter. We also were using the Anastasia Glow Kits. Like, this was the palette to have because you get 4 highlighters for 40 bucks. And then if you wanted something more affordable, you were using the Maybelline Master Chrome. So I had the Molten Gold and Rose Gold was the main ones I was using. I'm gonna use the Anastasia Glow Kit. Now they don't even make this one anymore. This one is That Glow. This one was actually my favorite. This is what That Glow looks like. So you do get some rose golds, regular golds, and bronzy golds, and like a champagne gold. For me personally, I loved dripping in gold right here, but for today's video, I think I'm just going to mix them all, and we are just going to highlight the face. Okay, we had to see our highlighter from a mile away, and I don't know if I'm gonna, oh, she is bright. Okay, so I'm just gonna go into my blush to try to soften that because I don't want a stripe. Okay, of course I have to highlight my inner corner and my brow bone because that was the thing to do. So I'm gonna take the rose gold from Maybelline and apply that on the inner corner. And I'm gonna add a little bit to the brow bone. Okay, I love me a good brow bone highlight. I feel like this just really glams up a makeup look. Drench myself in this spray. And this is my signature 2016 rose gold glam. Okay, for 2016 you had to have the mauve lip, the big hoop earrings. We were definitely in our messy bun era and our snatched ponytails, so I got my space buns going on up here. You just had to be there. Now this is a lot of makeup. Okay, she is snatched and this was a beat. Okay, you look like this every day. I don't think I could do this every day. I feel like the face is definitely giving way matte, and just the matte lip with it, I feel like we need a little bit more dimension and a little bit more glow to the skin. This is what I would look like in 2016. The face was giving beat down. She was definitely a vibe. Sometimes I would even add glitter, but most of the time I was wearing this as my everyday glam. Crazy. In 2016 I was 21, so I was a little bit older but still very young, and I actually ended the year finding out I was pregnant. I found out in October of 2016 that I was going to be a mommy, and I was able to make a birthday announcement in December announcing that I was pregnant. Now I have an 8-year-old going on 9. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me with this 2016 revamp makeup. Let me know what your thoughts are on this look. Are you guys bringing back your 2016 makeup era or not? I think I am, but I'm going to be making some minor adjustments. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.